Hello and welcome back to J.P.s World of Wrestling. I really sincerely hope that you enjoyed my random LJN match that I just decided to do on a whim. Well, not really on a whim. One of you requested it, so I had the time, so why not? Anyway, so it's time for another top 5 list. And this time I'm doing my top 5 favorite WWF tag teams. And now these are just my top 5. These are tag teams that I always enjoyed. And so one of the things that I missed about wrestling, one of the things that I missed after a certain point in wrestling was actual tag teams. After the 80s, tag teams were kind of phased out. I mean, they still kind of existed to some degree, but not the way it was in the 80s. Like, especially in the late 80s, there were a lot of tag teams. There were a lot of tag teams. And most of the heel tag teams all had managers, but there were just a ton of tag teams. So, uh, so this list is comprised of just WWF tag teams that I always liked. I always liked watching, and for whatever reason, they resonated with me. So, starting with number 5, I'm going to go with the Bushwhackers. Oh, yay! Luke and Butch the Bushwhackers. That's right. I always enjoyed the Bushwhackers tremendously, even though they were never going to be, the higher up tag teams that are in line for title shots or whatever. They were just there to be fun. They were just there to entertain the fans, and that's exactly what they did. And I was always highly entertained by them. They weren't super technical, but who cares? Okay, they were just fun to watch. And the way they would kind of march to the ring and just grab random fans and lick them on the head. And then, they would wear their camouflage pants and their, tank tops, and, they would just march around the ring. And they had a shtick that they did. It was just fun. Who doesn't love the Bushwhackers? I'm sure there are probably people that don't love the Bushwhackers, and that's fine. But I love the Bushwhackers. I'm just saying. So number 4. Now some of you are going to go, oh, why is it number 4? But number 4 is the Legion of Doom. Now, I really like the Legion of Doom. They're not number 1, but the thing is, I knew about the Legion of Doom before they came to the WWF because I knew them as the Road Warriors. Everywhere else in the world where they wrestled, they were the Road Warriors. But in the WWF, they were the Legion of Doom. And I liked them. I liked them a lot. Hawk and Animal, oh, what a rush. They were just two big, tough guys. I loved how they came to the ring with their big, spiky shoulder pads and everything. And, they were devastating as far as the WWF goes. But, they didn't really resonate with me as much as the first number 1 team that I'm going to talk about here in a minute. But, Hawk and Animal, I'm down. I love those guys, and that's why they come in at number 4. So number 3 was another team that I really liked watching. I thought that they were ahead of their time. They were not like the other tag teams in the WWF at the time because they were doing a lot of high-flying, high-energy stuff that nobody else was doing. And of course I'm talking about Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels, the Rockers. Now, in the AWA, they were known as the Midnight Rockers, but in the WWF, Vince just dropped the Midnight, just called them, yeah, you're just the Rockers. And I loved watching them. They were all over the ring. They did a lot of double team moves. They flew off the top rope. They did a lot of double team moves and high flying stuff that nobody else was doing at the time, like I said. And I always loved watching the Rockers. They were probably one of my favorite tag teams of all time, bar none of any team, either WCW, WWF, AWA, doesn't matter. I loved the Rockers, which is why they are number 3. And number 2, I'm going to go with the Hart Foundation. Bret the Hitman Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart, those two guys, I always loved watching them. They came in as heels, managed by Jimmy Hart, but then soon they ditched Jimmy Hart and just branched out on their own. They didn't need him anymore. But yeah, as tag team champions, they were believable. I always thought they were a believable team. They had different styles, Jim the Anvil was kind of a character, and he was kind of a power lifter, football player type, and Bret Hart was the technical, classically trained wrestler, and they meshed together well, and I always thought they made a great tag team, and they were always one of my top favorites, which is why they're in my top 5. So they are number 2. Now, number 1 is a team that many thought were a copy of the Legion of Doom. I'm not sure, maybe they were, I don't know, but of course I'm talking about Demolition. Axe and Smash of Demolition. I loved watching these guys. To me, they came across as really, really bad tough guys. You know, they had the spikes and the face paint. They came down with the leather masks and stuff, and they really looked kind of like post-apocalyptic warrior almost. And they were just tough, and I really enjoyed their style. You know, they weren't technical. They just kind of beat guys down with their hands and their fists, and you know they came across as very dominant and very tough, and they did dominate the tag team division for like a year or so, like year and a half, 2 years. They dominated the tag team division. You know, they won the tag team titles from Strike Force, and then they lost them to the Brainbusters. Then they won them back from the Brainbusters. But then, you know, the WWF brought in a third member of Demolition. They brought in Crush. I wasn't a big fan of Crush. And I've said this before on this channel. I don't like speaking ill of the dead because Crush is no longer with us. But I really wasn't a big fan. You know, I was always just a fan of just Axe and Smash. But at the time, Axe was kind of on his way out. They were kind of trying to phase him out, and it was just going to be Smash and Crush. But at the time, that was the time when the WWF acquired the Legion of Doom, which I think is Vince always kind of wanted to bring them in. So now that he actually had the Legion of Doom, he no longer needed the Demolition almost. So he kind of phased Demolition out, and Crush became a single wrestler, and Smash became the Repo Man. So anyway, but while Demolition were here, and when they were the tag team champions, I liked them. To me, they were believable as tag team champions because they were small enough to where they could compete with teams like the Rockers and the Strike Force. I mean, but big enough to where they also seemed dominant, you know, to where they could compete with other teams like the Colossal Connection, which was Haku and Andre the Giant, and Legion of Doom, 2 big guys there. But yeah, I always liked Demolition. I salute you guys, and last I heard, they were still on the independent scene, still wrestling as Axe and Smash at Demolition. Technically, they don't really legally own those names. Those names technically belong to World Wrestling Entertainment, but I think that's probably why they haven't been inducted in the Hall of Fame, because they're sort of in long litigation in regards to the names and whatever. I don't know. I don't know the exact details, but nevertheless, that's my top 5 tag team list. What are your favorite tag teams? I want to know in the comments below. There's no wrong answers here. There's no wrong answers. These are just my top 5. You might have a different... In fact, I'm pretty sure most of you have a different top 5. So what are your top 5s? I want to hear them. Leave them in the comments below. And if you're new here, go ahead and like and subscribe. Share on social media if you want to. And I will see you next time.